Here we go then. Welcome one and all to the Matchbook Weekend Football Podcast. I'm Ali Maxwell. And for those of you watching the stream of this, you can see that it's going to be an easy one for me today. 3 guests for me, providing value selections, a reduced slate of Premier League fixtures, of course, but still some intriguing matchups. And we'll have a look elsewhere in the EFL, in Scotland, across Europe too. So join us as we run through the card. I've got We Love Betting's Mark O'Haire here. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Ali. How's it going?
Yeah, really well, thanks. Excited about this. Pro punter Nick Goff rejoins us. All right, Nick?
How you doing? All right?
Very well indeed. And broadcaster Matt Scott as well as our third voice. Matt, all going well?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Snapped my knee ligaments, so we're still in it.
Good, good. Well, plenty of opinions for you listeners and viewers today, and an easy job for me. I'm just going to be steering between these 3. We're going to start with a huge game towards the bottom of the Premier League, and it's Brighton against Watford. Now, Brighton at home at the Amex this weekend. It's 5:30, the late kickoff on Saturday here at 2.21. Watford 3.75, and the draw 3.5. In terms of an Asian handicap, Brighton minus a quarter of a goal, 1.877, and Watford plus a quarter of a goal, 2.06. I should say we're recording Thursday morning, so prices are subject to change, but these are all as we record on the Matchbook site. Over 2.5 goals available at 2.02, and the under 2.5, 1.884. It's a monster game, isn't it, Nick Goff? There's only 3 points between the teams, but Brighton are 15th and Watford are 19th. So you can see how tight it's getting down there. How do you see this one playing out? Talk me through it.
Yeah, I feel like it's 2 sides that are in a relegation battle, which for different reasons, you feel both probably a little bit too good to go down. From Watford's perspective, obviously that horrible start to the season, and once you start a season as badly as they did, you're probably in the battle right to the end, even if you play as well as they have done recently. But form-wise, they're playing like a mid-table side, albeit really tossed 3 points in the bin last weekend against Everton. From Brighton's perspective, I really feel like they're a better team than they were last year. They played better football. Their performance metric has been very strong. But they've played 2 of the fellow relegation battlers recently, West Ham and Bournemouth away from home. They got beat twice, despite probably having the better of the game on both occasions. And then at Villa at home, they drew 1-1, the slightly the better side that day, but didn't get the 3 points. A point's no good to them really in games like that. So they've managed to get themselves dragged into this relegation battle, despite, for me, looking like a reasonable mid-table side. Where I've come down to with this game is that what I've seemed to have noticed is that these games are very open. These Watford games, especially away from home. They went to Villa and they got beat 2-1, very open game. They went to Bournemouth and tore Bournemouth to shreds, won 3-0. It looks quite a sort of open game with potential for goals in it here. And the other thing I do think is the game state consideration. If this gets to 1-1 an hour in, the draw's really no good for anyone. Brighton really need to win their home games, and Watford being in the bottom 3, a point's no good to them either. So I do think if the game's, say, 1-1 with 20 minutes to go, both sides really go for it, and that helps the over. The one concern I've got with the over 2.5 this weekend is there's a storm warning across the country, isn't there? And that will lead to lower goals across the whole country. So you want to, especially in the EFL, in a sort of more open grounds where the wind's going to get in, you do want to be a bit cautious with your overs bets, because there will be fewer goals in general this weekend. But that Brighton Dome, I've been down there on a wind that hasn't really played too much of an effect on the pitch, so I'm happy to stick with the overs here.
Okay, and this is going to be quite a strong start to the pod selection-wise, because Mark O'Haire, you fell on the same side of that coin.
Yeah, I mean, I came into this game wanting to be with Brighton, but I've found myself trying to get with Brighton too many times this year, and I've been burnt too many times as well. They've only won 2 of the last 14 now. Those wins came against Arsenal under Freddie Ljungberg, and also that Bournemouth in the middle of that rotten run as well. And they've only won 1 of the last 7 at the Amex across all competitions. So there's a point where, you know, the evolution under Potter, which is very enjoyable, and that expansive, attractive attacking style is very easy on the eye, but it's not being turned into points. more so down to their strikers effectively not scoring goals or not scoring enough. They've had the 6th most shots in the league, top 8 for XG, shots attempted from inside the penalty box. Interestingly, they brought Murray back into the team for the first time since September last weekend. Scored a goal. Expect him to start here. Shows their adaptability, really. But despite kind of not finishing off their chances enough, they've still scored in 15 of the last 18 in the Premier League since the start of October. I expect them to create opportunities. They do tend to perform reasonably well at home to bottom half teams, not just under Potter, but also under Houghton beforehand. I'm just surprised over 2.5 goals as odds against in this match. I think there's a lot to like about Brighton going forward. They're still a little bit vulnerable defensively. We've seen that enough times now. And Watford will present a threat, which Brighton do seem to, look a little bit vulnerable to. The sort of high-pressing team, counter-attacking team. They showed intent to do that against Everton last week, also away at Bournemouth and Aston Villa. I don't think back-to-back defeats will really have stunted progress for Watford, really. And I think going forward, you look at them, they've got Deeney and Deulofeu who have dovetailed nicely. Welbeck is back fit again, so if Sarr does miss out again, he can come back into the team. I just think there's also a bit of an adaptability about Watford too. They might not have done a huge amount in the second half against Everton when chasing the game last weekend, but I think there's still got enough quality in that forward line to cause Brighton problems. And then, you look at defensively, they've only got 5 defenders available. It's quite an ageing defence too. Pearson's talked about this kind of regrettable defending they've had in recent weeks as well. I don't think they're by any means bomb-proof themselves. So sort of going back into what Nick was saying as well, the dynamics of the match and how the game could play out in game state is also, on our side here as well. So, I expected over 2.5 goals to be a little shorter than it is. Surprised it's odds against, so that'd be my favourite play.
Okay, and Matt, you've got a slightly different angle for us in this one.
I do. Well, I mean, actually, I'm going to argue against the highest scoring game first and foremost, because just because the lads have just put such a strong argument in favour of the overs, I wonder really. I just think, can you expect these strikers ever to score goals? I mean, it's not something you really want to put the mortgage on, because Mopai is way underscoring his XG. There are 5 other players in the Brighton team that are. We know that Watford are massively underscoring their outputs. I mean, Nick mentioned just how impressive they've been in terms of their build-up play this season. They really have. But, if you excuse me, they haven't been putting the ball away. And that's been a real concern for them. And it's why they are where they are. It's not because they're a bad team. So, excuse me, I do think that this is a question for anybody who's going to be looking at betting on the overs. I think you've got to make sure that the teams are capable of finishing their chances. And I don't see that with either of these teams. I also look at it strategically from the way that Brighton have been setting up against these less vaunted teams this season, or certainly in recent results. I mean, obviously the games against Bournemouth and West Ham do stand out. They both were really high-scoring games. But apart from that, if you look at the 1-1 draw at home to Villa, 2-0 win at home to Bournemouth, a 1-1 against Palace, and a 1-0 at home to Sheffield United, that sort of feeds into a narrative that Brighton are content to keep the score low and try to deny the opposition 2 points in these games that are the relegation 6-pointers. So that's giving me pause around that, and I think it justifies the reason why the unders is odds on. I think that Nigel Pearson would be content with the point as well. I think that this is a Watford team and a Brighton team. I completely endorse what Nick's saying. I think they're both better than the teams around them, generally speaking. I think they're producing really well. In fact, I'm looking at my metrics in terms of their build-up play, attacking and defensively. They are the 8th and 13th best teams in the league. It's just about the goals at each end that have been the problem for those two teams, and that's obviously the point of football. But I still favour Watford. I think that if you're looking at a team that's out of these two that's more likely to turn around their questionable finishing, I do think it's a Watford side. I like them a lot. I think that they've been a little unlucky. They were unlucky, having gone right to the end against the 10-man Everton side to have lost that so late on. If that doesn't deal a tremendous psychological blow for them, then I do favour Watford to bounce back on this one today. So being conservative with it, I'll go for them plus 2.25.
Okay, nice. And we're going to get going with Everton and Palace. This one's the early game on Saturday, 12:30 kickoff UK time. Everton are 1.66 on the Matchbook site at the moment. Crystal Palace 6.7 and the draw 3.9. Everton minus 3/4 of a goal, 0.75, available at 1.84. And Palace plus 3/4 of a goal, 2.09. Over 2.25 goals is 1.88, and the under 2.25 goals, 2.02. So, Matt, if you've got rid of that frog in your throat, keep going here. I know you've got a strong opinion on this game as well.
I do, yeah. I mean, look, Everton have only won by more than a single goal twice this season. So what I'm about to say, I think, is probably people are going to be trying to put me in a lunatic asylum for. But both the times that they did that, it was against a London club travelling to Goodison. The first was against West Ham, then against Chelsea. And I've got a feeling that this time they're going to do it again. I think that they are going to win by 2 goals this time. I think they're really improving under Carlo Ancelotti. They've only lost the once since Marco Silva was sacked, and that was at the Etihad, so there's no shame in that. They've got 11 points from the last 15. They were robbed, I think, of 2 points against Newcastle because in that game, and consistently with the way they've been playing under Carlo Ancelotti, and to a degree under Marco Silva, they did ruin Newcastle on the XG, and they've been dominating teams an awful lot this season. It's not unusual for them to outplay teams so heavily. So I think it's been strange that they haven't won by 2 clear goals as often as they, more often than they have. Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison are both an absolute handful. Goals are now coming. They're now flowing under Carlo Ancelotti. They've always been good, those two, but now the goals are up 41% under him versus the way they were against under Marco Silva. They've much improved at the back as well. Jordan Pickford was, absolutely an open door in front of goal for Everton, but now that's really tightened up. He's now getting back to close to even Stevens on his XG. The goals that he should be saving, he really is, and a few more now. Everton play an awful lot of crosses, and 1 in 20 of all their passes is a cross, which is astonishing for a side that gets as much possession as Everton. And okay, Palace are decent in the air. They've got Gary Cahill, they've got James Tompkins. That's a decent defence for that. But you've got 2 players in Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin in particular who really can make it a difficult day's work for them. So what's also interesting on the crosses point is that Palace have conceded more crosses than any other team. Sorry, actually not any other. There's one other team that's conceded more than them, and that's Norwich. But they are so vulnerable to the cross. Everton also win an awful lot of set pieces. Richarlison wins a lot of fouls in the final third. There's only 2 players who do that more often than him, and they're Jordan Ayew and Wilf Zaha. So we're going to see a very stop-start game today. But the thing here is that Palace have nothing else apart from free kicks in front of the box. They don't create enough. They're the lowest scoring team in the Premier League. They brought in Tosun to fix that. That's not the problem. It's the supply chain. They are disastrous creatively. So if I look at the 2 data metrics that I have to examine build-up play, Palace are in the bottom 2 for both of them. They're completely rubbish on the ball. They rely an awful lot on Guaita, who's been fantastic to keep the goals down at the other end, but actually XG conceded is enormous. Yeah. So none of these things are a sustainable policy. I mean, he literally chucked one in at the weekend. Is he on the blink of a blip? It's possible. So I really do favour Everton to win this. I think they can win this one heavily. I think they can let loose. If they're going to let loose at all this season, and I expect them to, under Carlo Ancelotti, it's in this game. So I've also got my weekend best bet to come on this a bit later on. But that's my bet for this match is Everton -1. Palace.
Okay. Mark, with your unique blend of stats and trends and your own opinion, does that stack up with what Matt said there?
Yeah, to an extent, I do like Everton to win this match. Interestingly, when they played Newcastle, depending where you shopped, Newcastle went off around 1.5 to 1.55 really at Goodison, and I don't see the challenger Crystal Palace being massively different to what Everton were up against that day. So if you're looking at sort of direct comparisons between the two teams, well, there's wriggle room there in the odds to suggest for Everton are potentially value for this game. Matt mentioned that their form has taken an excellent upturn since Marco Silva departed. Well, in the 10 games since he's gone, only Liverpool have earned more points in the Premier League than Everton, which is quite surprising, really. But they were pretty abject in the first half last week. Got out of jail really from those 2 set pieces. But I think it's a sign of how far they've come. Really, the sort of we talk about character and resilience. Well, it's the first time they've come from behind to win a Premier League game since December 2017. They've earned 4 points now from 3 Premier League games after falling behind under Ancelotti. They managed only 5 points from a possible 84 in similar circumstances under Silva. So there has been an upturn in attacking outputs as well. XG's up, shots are up, positive passes are up as well. So there is quite a lot to like about this Everton team. Moises Ken had his best game against Newcastle in an Everton shirt recently. Calvert-Lewin linked up with him very well, Bernard as well. So injuries have eased as well. Iwobi, Richarlison, Sigurdsson all back. Delph is out, suspended, but Schneidlin can step in. And Everton normally do a decent job when hosting bottom half teams. I think it's 19 wins from the last 26 at Goodison, 13 clean sheets in that spell as well. I am a little bit wary of Palace. That's why I prefer the minus 0.75 handicap here on Everton. Injuries have eased massively. They'll field something close to their first choice back line. Hodgson's been pretty peeved about their lack of transfer business. He was gutted by last week's loss as well. But they are still quite a resilient defensive unit. They will put up a decent fist of things. Again, just like I was talking about Brighton, Palace have burnt my bridges quite a lot this season, so I'm still quite wary of them. But their form overall is pretty disastrous, really. 3 wins in 17 in the Premier League. I think they failed to have 4 shots on target or more in all but one of the last 20 in the Premier League as well. Matt's talked about their over-reliance on set pieces and Zaha. They're also averaging the lowest ever shots on target average in the Premier League, which is just over 3. Pretty disastrous, really. But I do expect this to be low-scoring too. Everton's home games against this kind of opposition normally are Palace's last 12. 10 have gone under 2.5. The 2 that didn't featured 90th minute goals as well. And as well, I think 11 of Everton's last 13 home wins been to 0. Palace have failed to score in 9 of their 10 defeats across all competitions. 8 of those actually ended 1-0 or 2-0. I think that's where I'll be looking towards Everton to win a narrow game. So, I think the minus 0.75 just offers a little bit more security in that sense.
Nice. Okay, and Nick, you're going to throw a few darts for us on some score shouts.
Yeah, so we talked about the Crystal Palace game last week on here against Sheffield United, and I went for 2 correct scores, the 0-0 and the 1-1. But for Greater's mistake, we would have copped the 0-0 probably. And for uncharacteristic, as Matt was saying, he's had a good season. Just the wrong time to throw in a shocker for me, but these things happen. I think one of the things that Mark mentioned, Schneidlin will come in for Delph here, which will sort of shore Everton up. The only 2 ways Palace can cause problems here are on the counter and at set pieces. Then Schneidlin coming in and sitting in front of the back 4 will actually help prevent those fast counters that Palace will see as one of their ways to get some sort of joy here. So I actually think Schneidlin coming in for Delph will probably be an advantage for Everton. One of the things I like to do is look at previous matches, recent matches that might play out the same way. And there's 2 Everton home games that I feel could be quite similar to this one. The Newcastle game, where if you take out injury time, they're 2-0 up and it's quite a comfortable performance until 90 minutes. And the Burnley game on Boxing Day, they won 1-0 and the post-match numbers suggested 1-0 was bang on the right scoreline. So I'm in this sort of unusual position here of liking the favourite minus 3/4, but also the under. And it's not really a double bet that I'd like to have because it's impossible to win twice. You can't win the full bet twice, minus 3/4 and under 2.25. So what I prefer to do here is second week in a row, play 2 correct scores in a Crystal Palace game. And for me, there'd be 1-0 and 2-0 Everton. Those, I think, are the 2 most likely scorelines and match with how I see this game playing out. So rather than having a bigger bet around or slightly odds on the Asian handicap, I'd take the 2 correct scores and couple them 1-0, 2-0 Everton.
Well, I'll take the 2-0 Everton. That would mean 3 winners out of 3 there. So let's go with that. For our next game, we are dipping down into the EFL, down in League 2, in fact, and it's Scunthorpe against Cheltenham. This is going to be discussed, I believe, by Mark O'Haire. And yeah, I mean, managerless Scunthorpe, we should say at this stage. They're hosting a Cheltenham side just in the playoff places at the moment, but with quite a few games in hand. And Scunthorpe are 2.42 to win this game at home. Cheltenham 2.99, just around 2-1 there. The draw 3.42. Scunny +0 on the Asian handicap 1.79, and Cheltenham +0 2.14. Over 2.5 goals 2.07, and the under 1.833. So Mark, what's caught your eye here?
Yeah, it's Cheltenham really. I think the price on Cheltenham with a quarter goal start is very appealing, around 1.8ish. You'll get a few more robust, more resilient teams in the Football League, especially in League 2 than Cheltenham. I'd probably mark only Newport alongside them in that sort of sense. But they've only lost 5 league games this season, 5 in 29. 3 of 15 away have ended in defeats, and only 2 defeats against teams in 10th or below. They've got the best defence in division. They've only conceded 9 goals in 15 away games. Managed to win last weekend against Morecambe despite quite a significant bout of illness in the squad as well, which affected quite a few players. The manager, Michael Duff, was very disappointed and frustrated with their performance. That was quite underwhelming. They still got the win. He kind of acknowledged that his team were nowhere near their best, and I'd expect a reaction really with a full full week of rest and recovery in that sense. And I think by all my metrics, really, I made them very narrow favourites at Scunthorpe. Yeah, it's Scunthorpe who are going off pretty clear favourites in terms of the layers. And as you mentioned, they sacked Paul Hurst last week after disagreements with the chairman over transfer business. They then went and lost 3-1 at Crawley under caretaker Russ Wilcox. They were 3-0 down at half time. Some really disastrous set-piece defending in that game was to blame for at least the first 2 goals. And they're conceding too often and too easily. They've conceded at least 2 goals now in 8 of the last 9 in League 2, and they're very short of fit and available defensive bodies as well to kind of make massive changes there. There's a whole kind of solemn mood really around Scunthorpe. But I think when the appointment of Paul Hurst was made in the summer, quite a few of us, including me, expected them to rally around and made some decent signings and they'd have a decent season. But it's been far from that. Things are looking pretty grim. There's a poor mood around the place. I think when you're conceding goals and conceding opportunities as prevalent as Scunthorpe are at the moment, you don't really want to come up against the Cheltenham team who are so well drilled and so well organised. The home team have only won 4 times at Glanford Park this year, 8 times overall in 31 games. We can get Cheltenham, a team who've only lost 5 times, 1.8 or above, with a quarter goal start. And I think that's a decent play.
Yeah, absolutely. Hard to argue with that. Nick, you're going to talk us through Sunderland and Ipswich now. This is a League 1 match, and Sunderland are the home side at 2.25, Ipswich 3.75, the draw 3.16. Sunderland minus a quarter of a goal 1.89, and Ipswich plus a quarter of a goal 2.03. Over 2.25 goals 2.02, and the under 1.88. This is 4th placed Ipswich travelling to 7th placed Sunderland. So plenty for both of these 2 teams to do to secure the promotion that their fans certainly would have expected, and many others early on in the season. Nick, how do you see the game playing out?
The weird and wonderful world of the League 1 promotion battle, where it should come with some sort of health warning, trying to get your head around what happens at the top of League 1, because it's almost like an escalator. A team gets on a good run, gets themselves into the top 6 or an automatic promotion race. You just think they're the ones that are putting it together, and then they collapse. It's happened to 4 or 5 teams. Peterborough, and now they're back on the way back up again. Ipswich were the team that started the season flying, but I'm really worried about Ipswich from here on. They've played 2 of their big promotion rivals recently. They got hammered 4-1 at home by Posh. Peterborough absolutely dominated the game from first to last, and then they went to Rotherham a couple of games ago. They got beat 1-0, but that really could have been 3 or 4. They were fortunate to get away, only beaten 1-0. Since Christmas, they've played 4 of the top 8 in total. They've not won any of those games. I'm And before the weekend, Sunderland went to Portsmouth, who are probably the form at the moment, the form team of the lot in League One is Pompey. Sunderland went there and got beat 2-0. Actually, the first 20 minutes played very well. Then Portsmouth sort of took control of the game from there. But it's no disgrace to go down there and get beat, especially for Sunderland, who had played at Tranmere on that horrible pitch at Tranmere on the Wednesday night, then had to go straight down to Portsmouth on the Saturday. A bad spot for them, really. But generally, I think Sunderland have been picking up under Parkinson. They'd hardly conceded a goal in January. They've got their defensive sort of problems in order. And I just think these are two sides going in slightly different directions. I think Sunderland are going to be there or thereabouts in the top six battle right to the end and probably will squeak into the top six. And I feel like Ipswich, together with Wycombe, are the two that are in that. It's probably a 10-team battle still for 6 places. And if 2 are going to drop out that have been up there all along, Ipswich and Wycombe would be my 2. And I think this is a spot where I'd like to be with Sunderland. I think they create more, certainly from open play, than Ipswich do, and just look like the team that are, for now, getting the house in order and playing better football.
Okay.
So -1/4, I think they are, aren't they?
Say that again, sorry?
-1/4 around evens.
Yeah, okay, happy days. On to any other business, starting with Mark O'Haire. Where are you taking us this weekend, Mark?
France on Saturday night. Rennes take on Brest, a bit of a Brittany derby, although they're not too close together, these two teams. Rennes actually lost their 3rd game in 13 league games on Tuesday night, 1-0 at Lille. An early goal, but it was no real disgrace. It never really looked like getting back into the game. Quite a tough game that. It'd come after they played 120 minutes in the Cup the previous midweek, and then had to go and play Nantes, one of their big rivals, on the Friday night as well. So they did look pretty leggy. Nevertheless, they're still in 3rd. They're still in a very good position. Collected the most points ever at this stage of the season in Ligue 1. So great credit to them. And I think they've got a great chance to get back into winning ways on Saturday night. They've won 10 of their previous 13. They've beaten all 6 teams who they've hosted outside of the top 8, scored 14 goals in those 6 games, generated over 2 expected goals on average as well. And they're on 1.85 with a -0.75 handicap, which I think is very fair. They've only lost 4 times in 23 at home under Julien Stéphan, 57% win ratio in that time as well. They've also got 24 hours more to prepare for this game. And if you look at games that teams who have hosted Brest, they're going off below 1.6. Nearly every team, really, apart from Toulouse, who are absolutely hopeless. So I think there's a slight smidgen of value there in Rennes in their standard match odds price. Brest played on Wednesday. I think I mentioned to you before, Ali, about French teams who potentially have 2 games or 3 games in a week. They'll often prioritise the home game, and I wouldn't say chuck in the away game, but certainly put more effort and basically pick their first 11 in the home fixtures and maybe look for something and nick something away from home. Well, Brest are terrible away from home anyway. They've lost 7 of 11 this season. They were cut to ribbons by Dijon in their last away game. And if you take Toulouse, who are a rock bottom, out of the equation, they scored just 6 times away from home, conceded 1.41 XG from open play, generate just 0.56 themselves. Away from home, conceding almost 19 shots, 7 shots on target as well. Also the most shots conceded from inside the penalty area, and they're also at their best centre-half, Castelletto, who's suspended. So I expect Rennes to get back into form. Brest to up at slight resistance, but I think it should be a comfortable home win.
Okay, Nick, rather, when we introduced you onto the pod last week, I mentioned that it's not just English football, but Scottish football as well that takes your fancy punting-wise. Is there anything from Scotland this weekend you'd like to tell us about? Yeah,
so Scottish Cup this weekend, and I've been looking for an opportunity to oppose one of the non-elite Premiership sides in this round, because there was a full set of midweek Premiership fixtures, whereas the Championship sides have had a full week. And the game that I think really fits the bill is Inverness against Livingston. Livingston started the season one of the favourites for relegation, 2nd smallest budget in the Scottish Prem, but they've been on an absolutely flying run. All credit to them. They'd won 5 in a row before midweek, but they've probably been overachieving slightly. And they went to Ross County, so a trip to the Highlands Wednesday night, and got beat 2-0. First loss this calendar year. And they've now got back-to-back trips to the Highlands. They go back to Inverness on Saturday. Inverness 2nd in the Scottish Championship, but they've got no chance at all of catching Dundee United, who will be champions. But Inverness will be in the playoffs. And the difference between the top of the Scottish Championship and the bottom of the Premiership is very small. So if Livingston are one of the worst 3 or 4 sides, even though they've been on this great run, and Inverness are second best team in the Championship, if you met them on a neutral ground, you wouldn't have a great deal between them. And if you then factor in the back-to-back trips that Livingston have had here, the fact that Inverness have had the full week to prepare, and Livingston's style, they're a very sort of direct, physical side. It's a sort of game that Inverness see every week in the Championship. There's not going to be anything new to them there. It all points to me that there's 16-5 around at the moment for Inverness to cause a mini cup shock. I'm not calling this a huge upset, because Inverness are actually a bigger club than Livingston are anyway. So this isn't some sort of giant killing, but around 4-5ish plus a half, or 16-5 to win the match. I think this is one spot where we might see a minor upset in the Scottish Cup this weekend. The other thing I'll quickly mention is any other business. I just want to flag up the fact that Bradford City are in a real mess at the moment. They're both of their strikers have gone. James Vaughan's gone on loan to Tranmere. Doyle's gone to Swindon, their promotion rivals. And it feels like Bradford, who sacked Gary Bowyer last week, are going to just sort of drop away tamely into mid-table, having been an automatic promotion contender not long ago. They're at home to Ian Holloway's Grimsby, who are a limited side. There's not a huge amount of technical ability in that squad, but one thing Holloway's done, if you listen to any of his post-match press conferences at the moment, has instilled a lot of confidence into the squad. He's almost treating them like they're his own children. And he's given them all a lot of time, refuses to criticise anyone for doing anything wrong. And they just seem like a side full of confidence who are going to play one who aren't full of confidence. And so I'd be with Grimsby plus a half at Bradford this weekend as well.
Just wanted to pick up on what you said there about Inverness Caledonian Thistle being a biggish club in Scotland. It wasn't always that way. And as a former newspaper man, I want to recall what I consider the greatest headline of all time. It was when a very lowly Highland side knocked Celtic out of the cup, and the headline was "Super Cali go ballistic. Celtic are atrocious."
It's a classic. It's an absolute classic.
Greatest of all time.
Yeah, sensational. Matt, keep talking, because I want to know what you've isolated as your best bet from everything you've looked at this weekend.
Yeah, it's not actually relating to this weekend's football in particular, but it does relate to one of the teams that we've looked at already here, and it is Crystal Palace to go down. They've got 30 points on the board so far, so they look safe. But I'm afraid I don't think they are by any stretch of the imagination. If you're looking for value in the market, it's not on Matchbook, unfortunately, but there is a big price available out there at around 10, 11 to 1, which I find astonishing. I mean, they've got to start picking up wins very quickly, because if you look at their running, their last half dozen games or so are Tottenham at home was their last game. They got Wolves away before that, Man United at home before that, Villa, which is an absolute must win, after Chelsea and Leicester in their previous 2 games. So most of those games are an absolute write-off for me. I don't see them picking up almost any points there at all, apart from potentially the Villa game. Burnley go to Palace as well in April. Before that, they've got Liverpool. So this is a really nasty run-in. So over the next 4 or 5 games, they've got to pick up points very quickly. I don't see them, and the 2 guys on with me today don't see them getting anything out of this game this weekend. Newcastle are obdurate. If they get a point out of that, then that will be a bonus. Brighton Palace is the big derby for both of those 2 teams, so that could go either way. And then Watford, if they're starting to pick things up, and we look like Bournemouth are hitting a bit of a run of form as well, I think they could end up picking up perhaps 2 more points over the course of the rest of the season. If that's the case, 11 to 1 is a fabulous price for them to go down, because 35 I see as being the minimum threshold for survival.
Big call, like it. Nick, what's your best bet of the weekend?
Yeah, as I've decided to make tradition, I've kept my best bet up my sleeve like I did last week. Haven't mentioned this one yet, but and I'm nothing if not stubborn, and I refuse to accept any other option than Leeds being the best team in the Championship. Results don't always prove it, but they're definitely the best team in the Championship, and -1/4 away to Forest in the live game Saturday evening. I believe that this run of 2 fixtures now Leeds have got, Forest away and Brentford at home, will actually bring the best out of them, and they will prove what I've been saying all year. They are the best team. They're still going to win the league. I'm still confident. Forest -1/4 away to Leeds.
Or rather, Leeds -1/4 away to Forest. just want to make sure that no one's doing the wrong thing. I'm with you there. Mark, what about you to finish us off? Your best bet of the weekend?
Yeah, I mentioned mine earlier. It's Cheltenham for me. Cheltenham +1/4 goal away at Scunthorpe. They've only lost 5 times in the league. They're playing a Scunthorpe side rudderless, leaderless, giving away catalogues of chances at the moment. They've only won 8 times since relegation as well. 4 times at home all season, and I think around 1.8 or above. And Cheltenham +1/4 goal is my best bet.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, guys. Really good stuff. Strong opinions, good analysis, everything that I wanted on Thursday morning ahead of this weekend's football. We'll be back again next week, guys, for another sort of half slate of Premier League fixtures. But I've no doubt that we'll be able to find plenty of other things to talk about. So as ever, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you've put yourself through that visual ordeal, and we'll talk again next week.